Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and today on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you Murder Trapp by Eugene Franklin. And this is copyright 1972 by Stein and Day. It's a little ratty looking, but I got it cheap, and cheap is always good. Stein and Day, interestingly, did have a line of mysteries back in the day. They didn't have a clever name like, Cock Robin Mystery or an Inner Sanctum Mystery. They were just known as a Stein and Day Mystery. However, I don't think that they ever really launched anyone who made it to the A list. And that ultimately is the arbiter of quality on any imprint is, can they launch authors really successfully? I think the first Stein and Day mystery I ever read was one of the Otley books by Martin Waddell. And they're sort of this comedic comedy of errors type series where the titular character Otley just sort of gets involved in international espionage and plots to blow up the world, but he's really just a regular guy who finds himself in the middle of all of these world events, almost like Zelig. And those books are pretty good. You don't really know what's going on in a lot of them, and they don't make a lot of sense, but they're entertaining. The other Stein and Day books that I've read, I'd say that they're good. They're of decent quality, but not really. I can't think of one that I think stands above the rest, or a Stein and Day author who really made it to, say the critics' top 10 list, or, was a critic's darling. So a lot of these Stein and Day books truly are forgotten mysteries, and that's one of the reasons why it's kind of fun to read and review them. A little bit about the author, a very little bit, Eugene Franklin. I haven't been able to find any information about him. We do know it's a pseudonym. We know that he published a few books. His biography on the back alludes to the fact that he may have worked for a foreign government at some point. But currently, as of the publication of the book, he was running an ad agency in New York. Appropriate because the book takes place in an ad agency in the 1970s. And I decided to read this one to pull it off of my TBR shelf, because I have read some really dark noir books lately, and I was looking for something a little bit lighter, something a little bit airier or fluffier and not so dark. And I just, reading the first couple pages, I thought, oh, this could fit the bill. And I've always been interested in the advertising business. At one point, I thought I might like to go into it. But even back when I was in college, it had a rap for being ugly and vicious. And anything I've ever heard or read about it since then confirms that opinion. I did try to watch Mad Men, and I didn't like it. God, was it slow and obvious. So please don't send a hit squad after me, fans of Mad Men. It just was not for me. But I like to read about the advertising industry, and so this book felt like it could fit the bill. So when I was looking for light, I didn't realize that this book would actually end up being quite comedic. It's not really to be taken seriously. It's It's the author having fun with a lot of Madison Avenue stereotypes and workplace politics. And the plot really has some crazy aspects to it. Like there's a subplot with voodoo, where one of the members of the ad agency has a voodoo doll made of him, and pins are stuck into it, pretty stereotypically creating stomach pain in him. And other types that you would, I guess, typically find in an ad agency. The title is a pun, Murder Trapp, because the not the lead character, but the client in this case, his name is Hammersmith Trapp. He is at the helm of an ad agency, and he believes someone is trying to kill him in very creative ways by, like, for example, placing an infected deer tick with Lyme disease on him when he's not looking, or adding some sort of sulfuric agent to a bottle of cologne that he keeps in his office, and sitting on tacks that have been poisoned and are intended to give him lockjaw. I mean, if this sounds wacky, it's because it is. And it took me a minute to realize that this book was going to be wacky. But then when I did, I went with it because I said to myself, oh, good. This is the break that I need from all that noir, dark stuff that I've been reading. So Hammersmith Trapp calls in our detective team, and the main investigator, his name is Berkeley Barnes, and he's a little bit of a hypochondriac, and he's got a younger assistant, Larry Howe, who basically keeps his pockets filled with different types of pills. Tranquilizers, aspirin, and he's there to always feed pills to Burke when Burke is having a bad day, which is pretty much every day. So it's kind of funny to see such a dysfunctional lead investigator. And I should mention, there was one thing about this book that drove me crazy, which is Burke is constantly popping or drinking Pepto-Bismol, and Pepto-Bismol is spelled wrong every time. It drove me so nutty that I had to go to the web and find out if that medicine had ever been spelled differently, and it didn't. So I can't believe this book got through writers, editors, proofreaders, publishers with the same typo over and over again. They spell it Bismal, B-I-S-M-A-L. If anyone knows anything about the history of that pink medication that I don't know, please feel free to enlighten me below. But that typo just kind of was like a nail in my brain every time I saw it. Anyway, that's probably beside the point. So Larry Howe is a young guy, sort of a man about town, and I have to say, he is a charmer. And what works about his character, I think, is that he doesn't work too hard to be charming. It's sort of natural to who he is. And for that reason, you know how those like charming, slick characters can kind of get on your nerves because you feel like they're trying too hard or they're just too good to be true? That's not true of Larry Howe. He's really likable, self-deprecating. He's constantly being put down by the woman he's pursuing, a woman who works at the ad agency by the name of Isabel Bell. And he just sort of deals with it and, gets knocked down and then gets back up on his horse, and he's going to try again to get Isabel to give him the time of day. And, he's just very much goes with the flow and lives with Berkeley's quirks, and frankly is happy to have the work because it pays pretty decently. And he is the narrator. Larry Howe is the narrator. It's a first-person narrative. And I don't know about you guys, but I love a first-person narrative most of the time. There's something so easy to read about a first-person narrative. I don't know, it's just like you get so close to that character so quickly, and you're right there in the middle of the action, and there's one point of view which allows for good surprises. I mean, it's not like there's a right way or a wrong way, to have a point of view. But I do like a first-person point of view, and when I started reading and I saw that it was first person, I was like, oh, yay, I'm happy. I'm happy that this is a first-person narrative. So the plot admittedly does not make a lot of sense. I think it's played more for laughs rather than, what we would consider the mystery or the investigation. Although there is one element to the investigation that's pretty clever that helps to unmask who done it, because there is a body that falls along the way, even though it's not the intended victim of Hammersmith Trapp. At the same time, though, I would say there were certain things about the plot that I just could not keep straight. There's one of the suspects is somehow involved in a car accident with someone who's related to Trapp. I mean, it's all very confusing, and no matter how many times I flipped back or tried to organize my brain so that I could understand that accident plot, it just never sunk in with me. So that could have been my fault for reading late at night, or it could be the book's fault. I'm not going to say, because I'm not sure which one it is. It didn't matter that much to me, and I'll tell you why. Because I knew who the murderer was from the second this person stepped on stage. It was so obvious. I don't think I've ever read a book where the perpetrator was more obvious. And so that sort of makes you wonder about the level of intelligence of the cast of the book, that the reader, who is supposed to be puzzled, knows exactly what's going on, but none of the characters do. So if you're looking to have your brain engaged and you're looking to apply your golden age of detection skills to a book, this is not the one for you. But if you're looking for something kind of lighthearted and a little kooky, I would say give it a try. It's just different enough and quirky enough that if you're tired of reading the same old thing, or you're in a little bit of a reading rut, it could be something that is that you would find appealing. I mean, overall, I wouldn't say that I find books that are billed as humorous mysteries to be all that funny. I mean, I think there are plenty of mystery writers who are very funny and very clever, like Ursula Curtis and Margaret Miller, but they're not trying to be funny. They just are. A lot of books marketed these days as comedic, I just find painful to read because they're just trying too hard. A lot of them have think that sarcasm is humor, and of course we know that it isn't. So it's kind of a tricky balance, a tricky trick to pull off to write a comedic mystery. And I think this one does a pretty good job of it. I think maybe a comparison would be Donald E. Westlake. I never really cared for him, but I know there are people who love him. So if you are in that category, I think that you might enjoy Murder Trapp by Eugene Franklin. Cats play a very, very, very minor role in this book. So don't be pulled in by what you think is going to be a cat plot. It's just cats playing with a person or teasing a person. I don't know. Frankly, I don't know what the cover is all about. But, you know, whatever. I didn't design it. Interestingly, I do think that I will read another of Eugene Franklin's books if I ever run across one. It was just quirky enough and different enough that I'd like to have another one on my shelf for when I'm feeling the need to try something different. I don't know if he has the same set of characters or not. I definitely liked Larry Howe enough to want to spend more time in his company. And then Berkeley the hypochondriac was interesting enough too for me to want to follow another case with these guys. So that's what I've got for you tonight. Murder Trapp by Eugene Franklin. If you can find a copy and read it and would like to post your ideas or thoughts or reactions here, please feel free to do so. And I really am on a roll of forgotten mysteries because I've now read 3 in a row, and I just noticed a fly on my wall, so pardon my distraction. I just started a Dick Francis from back in the 60s. And so everybody knows how good he is, and I'm looking forward to reviewing him here, even though he's not forgotten. His name lives on today with books by his son. But I'm getting ahead of myself for the next review. So on that note, I will say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.